Inflation expectations continue to rise along with their prices. It's been across the board, and many have called this the commodities supercycle. Ultimately, this means less money in your pocket, but there are strategies people can implement to hopefully reduce the burden and potentially come out better off, even if inflation continues its upward trend. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today, this video will not be a comprehensive analysis on the subject, but I'm going to hit some points that I think will help people out big time. I know it'll be basic to some people, and some individuals will already be far ahead. But if everybody would just get some of these points down and implemented, at least to some degree, they're going to be so much better off, so much, have much better security for themselves and their families. And if, we actually get into a point of major inflation, hyperinflation, they're going to be doing much better than the general public. So all of this here is really something that I'm going to be highlighting a couple points, and hopefully from those couple points, maybe we can do additional videos down the road. Maybe we can look at this more in depth. But for this one here, we're going to cover the basic topics that I think everybody should know. I will say right now, if you have any suggestions, definitely put them in the comments below. We want to actually get people talking here, sharing their strategies, sharing what they believe is the right thing to do, and everybody can learn from that, because it's not just me here. I'm covering a few points, of course, but let's get into some topics that I think are really key right now in 2021. Essentially, we've been seeing prices increase all over the place. This is showing you the food price index and breaking it down into other commodities. But I wanted to give you just an example of what's been happening. And also, you've got shortages appearing everywhere. This happens to be in computer chips, but this is going on all over the place. And you can see how that affects people in their bottom line. That's what it comes down to. Does it really matter if Samsung can't get the chips in and that's going to create a problem for Samsung? No. If somebody needs to buy a cell phone or a computer and so on, and the prices are 5%, 10%, 20%, 30% higher because of different factors, that's where it hits. And then you look at what's happening with something simple as food. The prices are increasing dramatically. I have polled the Money GPS subscribers many times, and I consistently hear that the price increase that they believe is 5%, 10%, 25%, and in some cases even higher depending on where they are. Now, this tells you that it's not the same all over the place. People experience inflation depending on what they purchase and where they live and where they get that from. But we know that the numbers that they're showing us are not accurate at all. So the prediction here is that we are going to see more inflation, not less inflation. And this has to do directly with the expansion of the money supply. That's what inflation is. Now, of course, if that money makes its way into the actual economy, which they're trying to do right now in the United States, for instance, but actually all over the place, where they're giving out all of this money, the stimulus package, and they have an infrastructure package planned. And this is going to funnel its way through different avenues, making its way in. That money, of course, is going to create additional pressure on prices. Where it goes, we'll have to see. But knowing that information, that's what I'm going to bring to you now. What can you do as an individual to, number one, reduce the burden, but potentially, I don't give financial advice, as you know, but what can you do to be better off later on? Okay, so these are the things we'll talk about here. If you are keeping your savings in the bank, under the mattress, anywhere where it's basically held out of your control, this is generally not a good idea in times of inflation, because the value of that currency is eroding rapidly. And the worse inflation gets, obviously, the faster this happens. So we can look at this as an example of what we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be keeping our money stagnant. We should keep it somewhere where it can multiply or it can maintain its purchasing power. This we know from many, many cases all across the world where we have seen the currency being devalued by the governments and people rush, usually too late, they rush to buy basically anything physical. If you look today at countries that experience high levels of inflation, you see people buying even things like cars, not even really nice cars, and not even really nice anything for that matter, but that thing, that tangible thing. A car gets people from place to place. That's going to hold more value than the cash, which is basically disintegrating and evaporating into, non-existence. That's what this is all about. You can see that today, examples today, okay? So basically, you have to convert your getting worthless currency into something that is real. Real assets, whatever that means to you, will always perform well in an inflation. Something that I believe is not really taken seriously enough is this. When you know that inflation is coming, and even if you didn't know, I think that this is such a smart idea. Having debt, any sort of debt, whether it's a mortgage or a car loan or whatever that might be, if you get it at a fixed rate, usually, depends on the situation, it's going to be a higher rate. But you can guarantee that you're going to pay this amount for this period of time. And that, to me, having that security is so important in times of uncertainty, right? So you get that fixed rate for the longest period possible and you're locked in, you're good. That to me is worth a lot. You can look around to different commodities and see the prices. This happens to be oat futures over the last 1 year, but just look across the board and everything has increased dramatically. So as an individual, you have to ask yourself, what can I do? One of those things is to simply grow your own food. Now, can you grow 100% of your food? For a lot of people, the answer is no. But can you grow a decent amount in your backyard? Yes, absolutely. I've shown this channel before. This comes from 1 Yard Revolution, and that's a YouTube channel. And if I'm not mistaken, he lives in the Chicago area and he grows year round. And he's simply using these hoop houses. It's a very, do-it-yourself kind of activity whereby he's basically using 2 layers in the cold months, and he doesn't have any sort of extra heating or anything like that. He simply uses this plastic layer on top and he's able to grow year round. And that makes a significant difference because your beans and your rice, that usually is the cheap stuff. It's the salad greens, it's all these different greens that are actually the expensive stuff, and those can be grown even in cold environments. Growing food at home is an extremely cost-effective, never mind the health factor, but the cost effectiveness is extremely high, especially when you could save your seeds and so on. Speaking of which, you definitely want to have some seeds. Even if you're not planting, I think that these become a very valuable commodity, and we have seen that before. So for something that I believe is extremely cheap, you could probably get these for free from some people, from your neighbors, or somebody who has a garden. They'll probably give you a bunch of seeds. No doubt about that. And the cost is just something, as far as I'm concerned, it's almost free when you think about what it can actually provide you. There are places that you can get bulk foods. This happens to be one that was recommended to me, but I'm noticing here that the online component doesn't have any stock anymore, Winco. So it depends on where you are, okay? This is just, used as a prop to tell you that buying food in bulk, you can get these beans or something that come in 25-pound bags and bigger, and that will lock in the price. I was actually communicating with one of the subscribers, one of my Patreon subscribers actually, and she was saying how basically the price of her coffee, she bought a lot of coffee, locked it in. Well, coffee is going up at 25% a year now. 25%. You buy it in bulk, you can freeze dry, whatever you got to do, you get that, and now you've locked in the price. So buying in bulk, as big as you can, is going to lock in the price today. Same situation with storable food. Now, storable food, freeze-dried food, for a lot of people, maybe they say, I don't want to eat that stuff. But what you're doing is basically guaranteeing that you've got this just in case. Now, maybe you want to eat it, maybe you don't want to eat it necessarily, but you've got an emergency supply. That's all I want to note from this. Want to talk about power as well. I think this is really key. You can see this happens to be a diesel generator. This one is solar, but I think, and I pulled it up here. Oops, I can't get ahead of myself there. Looking at this, the point I wanted to make is having a battery power as well. Because if you were able to store that energy, I think it takes it up definitely to the next level when you're looking at solar panels. But the point I'm trying to make here is that there are ways to cost effectively manage your power. And I've seen it before where they have setups where, let's say there's peak hours at which they charge you a higher rate for your power. Okay, let's just say it's between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Well, you can use the stored battery power, which was collected during the day in the cheaper hours, and then you use the battery power automatically, by the way, this is done during those peak hours, and then late at night you go back on the grid again. And this can be done, it's not cheap, I'm not saying that, but these strategies here, it might be something that for some people they can implement and actually do themselves a favor in the end. So there's the concept of having a backup power, which is really key, but also using this for cost savings initiatives. All right, I didn't want to get ahead of myself there, but looking at what we have to not, I want to choose my words carefully here, but essentially what does very well during the period of an inflation. And you look at that historically, time and time again, it's real assets. The primary ones, of course, being gold and silver. Now, what happens this bull market? What happens the next bear market? When you're looking at it, of course, we only know in hindsight, but absolutely, we have seen real assets perform best. And it only happens when faith in everything else is basically lost. That's why right now today, you're not really seeing so much of this intense bull market behind gold and silver, because the market still believes in the Federal Reserve and their ability to mitigate any losses. Once that is lost, then people turn to gold, and that's physical gold, and then I believe silver is sort of secondary on that. The performance usually lags behind and then rockets higher. That's what we've seen in the past. But the point is simply that you watch real assets and people turn to it. But like I said, you look at places where you've got high inflation today, and they might be buying cars. They might be buying, basically anything physical, tangible that they can hold, that they can sell later. Like I said, a car takes you from place to place. So in an area where you've got a destroyed currency, something like that actually might be beneficial. But normally when you buy a car, of course, it absolutely declines. It's definitely not an asset in some cases, but in some cases it can be. And then you look at this, junk silver, common coins. When you see this, many people think junk. Yeah, it's junk. No, absolutely not, because these are things that you can take with you. You can actually see the value in them, and you can use them just like that, if somebody wanted to. But I think that it has a lot of value for its ability to be traded, to be used, to be recognized globally, and so on. Real estate is another real asset. Now, of course, you look around, you see the prices are ridiculous. I do videos about it all the time. But the one aspect of real estate that I want to just mention here is particularly with multi-family residents. Okay, so you're talking about a property that might have, let's say, 30 units or 100 units, and it's all in one, managed under one roof, and so on. This is important to know because when you have people, if you look at what happened during the housing crisis, so a lot of people moved out of rentals, and they were saying, this is the American dream. I can own a house now, even though I don't have a job. I can just buy a house. So that what they do is they moved out of those places and they moved into their own house. Then they realized that, oh, wait a minute, I can't afford it. They went back to rent. And these type of places here, these type of rental units are the best for the owners. These are the places that often can do very, very well. Not single family homes that people are renting out. The cost to actually maintain them is reduced when you have more under one roof. So these are kind of the most cost efficient, but of course you usually have to pay a lot of money for them. But I'm just trying to stress the point that what happens through a cycle. And if you see people today where there's more home ownership for certain groups of people, and depending on where you look, of course, but when you see more ownership, eventually when that levels off and then starts to go down in the next cycle, you have more people that need to rent, and that of course helps out multifamily real estate. Last thing I wanted to point out here, think about the things around your house, like a first aid kit, like hydrogen peroxide, things that are very valuable, but you don't necessarily need a gallon or 10 gallons of hydrogen peroxide. But maybe this is something that one day can become a commodity. And I'm not talking about hydrogen peroxide specifically. Maybe it's 99% alcohol. Maybe it is these things that you would use over a period of, let's say, 10 years or 20 years or whatever. You could buy it in bulk, lock in the price today, and you have that. It's in your possession. So think about those things. I don't want to rant on. I hope you found some value in this video here. I'm actually planning on doing one video per week looking at something different, something that I don't normally cover. So if I can, we'll see what happens. One video per week that's just about something different. I'm always open to suggestions. You can, of course, leave them in the description below. If you found the video informative, give me a like. Hit that like button to support the channel. Thank you. If you want to learn about e-commerce and you're interested about Amazon, you can learn for free at the amazongps.com. If you want to know about my 2 books, you can check it out at the link in the description. And if you haven't seen this video yet, you definitely want to check it out. Click them and I'll see you there.